Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John Dallin. It's January 4th, 2022. It's the first Mormon Stories recording of the new year. So happy New Year to all of you. We're really excited to have you with us today. And I'm excited to have with me in studio my dear friend, Clint Martin. Hey, Clint.
John, what's up? Good to be with you. Happy
Thanks for joining
New
us
Year's.
again. Yeah. Hey, Natasha Helfer's in the house. Hey, Natasha.
Super happy to be here. Happy New Year, everybody.
And we have the one, the only Kara Burrell. Hey, Kara.
Hello, friends. I am among friends today. Everyone, please tune in and join the friends.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah. And we're live streaming to our audience, so we welcome all of you. Today, we're going to be basically addressing and answering a second round of questions given to us by the Salt Lake Tribune, by Peggy Fletcher Stack and Tony Semerad, because we answered a first set of questions that they gave us, about a month or so ago, and we are taking the time to answer a second set of questions. But before we do, we have one quick public service announcement. It's why I'm wearing my Thrive hat. We have a super exciting event coming up called Thrive Unite, which is January 22nd, and it's happening in at least 22 cities. And Clint, you're kind of the brainchild of this. Do you want to give a quick 1-minute promo of Thrive Unite? Anything you want to say about it?
Yeah, John, it's amazing to see all the work that people have gone to put together an event in 22 cities simultaneously on January 22nd. Since we were on last time, we added Ogden, Utah. We added Charlotte, North Carolina. We added Omaha, Nebraska. That's close to your hometown, Natasha. We added Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Kentucky. We added Washington, D.C., and Denver, Colorado. We're so excited. We've got a bunch of other cities, Northern, Southern California. We've got Canada. We've got the UK. We've got Seattle, Portland, Phoenix. We've got an amazing lineup in Phoenix, Atlanta, Houston, Las Vegas, Provo, of course, Kansas City, Albuquerque, and our good friends up in Idaho Falls. They've gone to a lot of work to put together amazing programs. They've got speakers coming in from all over the place. So this is a great chance to build local community, to find people near you that have left the church that want to help support you, understand your journey with you. So go on the website, thrivebeyondreligion.com, find your closest city, grab a ticket. January 22nd. It's coming right up.
I love it. And, just to give people an idea, you can meet Radio Free Mormon at the Seattle event. You can meet our own Kara Burrell, Nuance Ho, along with Alan and Katie Mount and others at the Sacramento event. We've got Bill Reel at Las Vegas. We've got Anthony Miller and Jesse Funk and Randy Bell in Southern California. Don't
forget about Tiffany Rowe. Don't forget about Leah Young
in Arizona. Yeah, Leah Young,
Sam
in Denver,
Young,
right? Sam Young.
I mean, the list goes on and on. Mark Osland.
Yeah. So just so many cool people, and all you got to do is just go to thrivebeyondreligion.com, find a city near you, and how do they find the speakers for each event? Is there a way?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. We're still working with our web developer to put together each of the flyers. So most of the flyers are posted in their local Facebook groups, but I'll make sure that we get that on the website so they can find the list of all the speakers at each of the event. And they can decide where in the country they want to fly to.
Yeah. You said Sam Young's in Houston, right?
Sam Young's in Houston.
Yeah. And a lot of other great people.
Yeah.
Okay. So please support that event. It's going to be fantastic. January 22nd. More to come on that. All right. So what is today's episode about? I'll give a quick summary. So about right before Thanksgiving, I was contacted by this gentleman named Tony Semerad of the Salt Lake Tribune. And if I'm being honest, and I'm going to be very calm and loving and compassionate, it was basically saying, John, we want to interview you for an article in the Salt Lake Tribune. And we want to talk about Thrive in the Open Stories Foundation. But the list of questions that they provided, Tony provided like 10 questions. He said that he was partnering with Peggy Fletcher Stack on this story. And it appeared to me and to everyone on the Thrive board and on the Open Stories Foundation board that all of these questions were sort of coming from an intent that we we were concerned about. There was not a single question about like how many people came to Thrive, how much did they love it, what were the positive takeaways, why are you doing Thrive, what are you trying to accomplish? Zero questions about that, and questions like that seem to be getting at, is there a financial conflict of interest between the Open Stories Foundation and Thrive? Is Thrive some sort of profiteering money-making scheme to make money off of people's pain, et cetera, et cetera? So I was eager to answer those questions, but I wanted to answer them fully and thoroughly. And so I answered them in a Mormon Stories podcast episode that we released, right after Thanksgiving. It was a little bit salty. It was a little bit defensive, but we answered every single question that we received. And I think it probably is experienced as a little bit sharp elbowed to Tony and Peggy, if I'm being candid. And again, that's just kind of sometimes maybe a bit of my defensiveness when I'm feeling attacked and worrying about maybe people's intentions to smear. So anyway, that happened. And I think maybe as a result of that, or maybe it was always their intent, almost immediately after that episode, what we received was a second set of questions. And of course, those questions are the ones that we're going to be addressing today, but they were all the types of questions we wished we had been asked to begin with. Like, why did you do Thrive? What are you seeing? Why is there a need for Thrive? How is it meeting those needs, etc.? So that's what today's going to be about. I will say just one quick thing, and that's that we were very, very eager, because Thrive is not John Dallin led. Thrive is board led. Thrive is led by Clinton Jenny Martin, Natasha Helfer, Lisa Hacking, and myself, but I'm a minority participant, and I'm doing a very small share of the total work. So we were very eager for Peggy and Tony to call and interview Clinton and Jenny Martin, Natasha Helfer, Lisa Hacking, other people that were involved in really making the Thrive event happen. And up until now, they've declined to interview any of the real leaders behind Thrive. For some reason, they only wanted to talk to me. And so that offer extends to this day. They have still not chosen to take us up on that offer. And what is valuable about having Natasha and Clint here is they can not only speak to Thrive, because they're both board members of Thrive and active participants. And in Clint's case, he's doing the lion's share of the work. But also, Natasha's been a participant in the Open Stories Foundation pretty much since the beginning. In fact, since the very beginning. So she could talk about the Open Stories Foundation as well as Thrive. And Clint currently serves on the board of the Open Stories Foundation as well as on the Thrive board. So we've got all the main players, all the people that know everything that's going on here in the room. Now, Clint, do you want to add anything in addition to what I said just about the past engagement? And I know you've talked to Peggy and Tony directly, and we want to be kind and loving and charitable. And, so is there anything you want to add to this?
Yeah. So just to give the listeners really quick, a little bit of context. So I did get a chance to talk to Tony and to Peggy. What I suggested is that we do a sit down lunch meeting with the three of us, along with the two of them. And that way we can kind of spend some time, have a good dialogue, answer their questions. That way they could follow up with us. Tony seemed agreeable to it. And then when I spoke with Peggy, she said that she didn't want to devote that kind of time to this topic, that this is really a short article and it didn't deserve that kind of attention. So, we'll take it as it is. Tony had sent over the questions, so our purpose today is to answer them. I did reach out to Tony again, but I haven't heard back from him. So hopefully this gets a chance to answer their questions, may bring up something that they find interesting, and they'll want to explore the topic further.
Yeah. Beautiful. And if I could just summarize the main gist of their questions, the relationship between the Open Stories Foundation and Thrive is that it's two independent nonprofits that share some board members, but share a common mission. We set up Thrive to be independent because we didn't want it to be viewed as an Open Stories Foundation entity. We wanted to be its own thing. There's no inappropriate financial relationship between the Open Stories Foundation and Thrive. I think we demonstrated that. And Thrive, as of today, is a massive money loser that's lost tens of thousands of dollars. And basically, Clint and Jenny Martin have footed that bill. So any questions around like making money off of people's pain and profiting off of people's pain, I think we dispatched with all of that by showing actually the financials of the most recent Thrive event in detail. And so I don't know if there's anything else we want to summarize about the last episode.
Well, and the beautiful thing, John, is unlike many churches, 501c3 nonprofits actually publish a 990 every year. And so you can jump right on the government's website, irs.gov, and you'll be able to find the 990 for the Open Stories Foundation. I reviewed it myself. The accountant reviewed it. Everything's in order. Thrive was formed this year, so it'll be filing its 990. You can look at all of the donations, everything that we spent money on. You can see that what we're saying is true. We're completely transparent with our finances. After each event, I send out a summary just so that attendees know, how it played out. So we're extremely transparent, and unfortunately, most churches don't meet that same standard.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so hopefully that answers the questions. We are having Kara monitor the comments on Facebook and YouTube and the questions, and we do, because of our commitment to transparency and our love for the community, we are welcoming people to ask questions, and we're going to ask Kara to monitor that and to ask credible questions in good faith to us, and we'll answer them openly and directly. And we let Peggy and Tony know we'd be doing this episode, so hopefully they're tuning in. All right, so what we're going to do now, I have a printout of Tony's email, and we're going to answer every question. So there's not going to be a question here that we don't answer in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully this will be interesting to you. I think there are a lot of good questions here, and I think this is going to be actually an interesting thing. And Natasha, I'm really happy to have you here as well, because you've got you basically have given your life to being a therapist and a coach to people in faith crisis. So you live at the center of why both the Open Stories Foundation and Thrive exist. And so I guess I also just want to give you a chance to do an opening statement. Is there anything you want to say as kind of an opening statement before we jump into the actual questions?
Okay. I wasn't prepared for an opening statement. I'm currently a board member of the Thrive Foundation. It's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I was a board member of the Open Stories Foundation, I believe. And yes, I have been around a long time doing this work. So I've been around watching many organizations, whether it's Sunstone or Open Stories or Thrive or Affirmation or the Mormon Mental Health Association, which I helped found. Many, many associations and organizations try to be part of the solution for faith transitions and people out there. And so whether that's community-led, therapist-led, member-led, it's been a journey, and it's resources that are widely needed, especially in any type of faith community that is considered high demand or conservative, from a conservative religious community. We're not the only religious community that is going through similar changes. And we see this in kind of the Bible Belt, where I've spent, over a decade and a half of my last life before I moved here to Utah in the last 2 or 3 years. And so we see this, in Pentecostal communities and Jehovah's Witness communities and kind of high demand evangelical communities,
Orthodox
Jewish communities, yeah. Some Catholic communities. It depends again on kind of the level of orthodoxy in some of these communities. So anytime you have faith transitions from high demand religions, you have a lot of pain within the communities at large, and therapists are in the mix of trying to help those families, marriages. A lot of mixed faith marriage work happens, a lot of mixed faith family work, a lot of individual work, a lot of identity work, a lot of sexuality work. A lot of my work is around sexuality. I became a certified sex therapist about, over a decade ago now, largely due to religious concerns around sexuality and transitions around religion. So it's interesting that my sexuality is also very much tied to my work around religious journeys. So that's how I come into this work. And I doubt that there's something out there in Mormon land that has to do with faith transitions that I'm not at least aware of or have been involved with somewhere along the road. So, because I've been at this for over 20 years. So yes, thank you, John, for that opportunity.
All right. Let me ask the one question I wish, it's not on this paper, but it's the one question I wish they would have asked. And we're going to get into this a little bit, but I'm just going to ask it right at the top. Why is Thrive even necessary, and why are we doing Thrive? I wish Peggy and Tony had asked that. Clint, you've got a lot of things you could be doing. You could be running businesses. You have several car dealerships. You've got a family that you love and care about. You like to have fun. Why would you want to spend 10, 20, 30, 40 hours of your week or more and literally 50, 60, 70 grand of your money in just 1 year? Why would you want to spend all that time and money to do Thrive? Why?
Yeah, John, that's a great question. And I guess the answer is just the need is so massive. I mean, when you see the people, the tears in their eyes and, the pain in their hearts, I mean, I grew up Mormon. I grew up helping. I mean, helping people is part of my identity. And this is a space where my wife and I feel like we can make a difference, where we can really give back. And I know a lot of the listeners feel the same way. It's amazing to me how many people volunteer to help us out with this work. So it's not just us. It's amazing to see how many people are interested in getting involved and giving back and helping people navigate this faith crisis. I mean, a faith crisis sounds like not a big deal, but the analogy that someone told me at one of the support groups was it's like having your skeleton pulled out of your body. And that's what a faith crisis is like. It's massive. Like you lose your identity. That was what you held on to and framed your whole existence on for your whole life. So it's a massive problem. So that's why we do Thrive.
Okay. And Natasha, I know that you kind of see clients every day in your practice, marriages, individuals. And do you want to add anything to why you wanted to be involved in Thrive and why you think something like Thrive is even necessary?
Yeah, I think what was exciting for me about the vision behind Thrive and talking with Clint and Jenny as I got to attend some of their first events was there's one thing in working towards the crisis part, which is what I do in my office every day. And that is the difficult work because, as Clint was just saying, so much of what a religion will do is form your identity. So much of what we see ourselves as, the decisions we make, who we marry, how we parent, who our community is, has to do with how we identify religiously. So when that is pulled away, you're left with a lot of void. And that's what shows up in my office. As you can see, though, the name of the organization isn't Crisis, right? The name of the organization is Thrive. So what I really enjoyed about the vision of this organization is what happens after that initial work of what's being done in my office. It's thriving after that initial crisis point. And that's something that isn't always done in my office. Sometimes people stick around in therapy to do the thriving piece. But I think what I really enjoyed about the vision was what happens past the crisis point, past that initial maybe 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years points of time that it takes to get past that initial kind of really difficult, dark night of the soul, as sometimes it's called in kind of faith crisis language, and get past that to that space of exploration and adventure and discovery and new community. And a lot of times when we talk to people within the Thrive communities, that's what they're really searching for and hungry for and craving. And I always say the Mormon community is good at offering community, right? Many religious organizations are good at offering community. So if you're leaving faith spaces, that's oftentimes what you need help rebuilding. And I think Thrive, as well as other communities, are trying to offer that. So I'm excited to be a part of something with that type of a vision.
Love it. I'll just add really quickly, and then Kara, I'm going to throw it to you. one of the things that I love about Thrive is there's pretty much no talk about Joseph Smith, about Fanny Alger, about peepstones, about golden plates, about the brethren, about latest current events in the church, or we don't complain about Mormonism. We don't criticize the church. It's not about church history. All that stuff is stuff that's left to other spaces. Thrive is about healing and growth after the church isn't working for you anymore. So it's very positive. It's very practical. It's very tools oriented. It's about how to have a healthy marriage, how to raise healthy kids, how to get healthy yourself, how to build a new sense of morality or spirituality or identity or purpose or meaning, how to find friends, how to find community, how to, just get healthy and how to have fun. Like I love that, Clint, you just organized a New Year's Eve gala where it's sold out. Over 300 people came and danced and partied and have fun. How to have fun and joy, when just a year or 5 ago, you felt like the world was going to end. So all of those things are what Thrive's about. You're not going to get a bunch of people complaining and bickering and deconstructing. There are other spaces for that. Did you want to add?
No, but I think we should let Kara talk about the gala.
Yeah.
She was there
I'm
dancing
like the
away.
gala's biggest fan. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm so grateful, but yeah, for all the people, Clint, Jenny, your wife, like everyone that worked so hard to pull that off. It was amazing. Yeah. And I got to dress up.
Yeah. And did you want to say anything else about Thrive or
Just
questions from the audience?
Yeah. I just wanted to add a couple things in here. And just wanted to shout out that Mark Fuentes, who's always in the live stream, super fan, Mark Fuentes. Thank you so much. Just wanted to say that people who are coming down from Cache Valley going to the Ogden Thrive, that there'll be a carpool and to reach out to him if costs or the driving thing is a detriment. And you can reach out to Mark. So if you're listening to this on audio, Mark's a cool dude. And then I thought this was interesting that David said, as a religion writer for a dominant paper in Salt Lake City, there is not a greater topic Peggy could write about in Utah. This is one of the biggest topics Peggy could be writing about. So I definitely agree with that. Religion is the subject of Utah culture, and people leaving the church and needing resources and wanting to understand more about how to grow and thrive after a religion. I think that us having this discussion, whether with the Tribune or without them, is what Utahns are really thirsting after, you could say. And then also just wanted to make sure that Josh's comment gets answered. So on the Thrive Unite page, if people go to it, sometimes it's listed with who's coming and who's speaking, and then other ones aren't. Are those going to be updated with who's speaking? Because there's quite a few events that he was mentioning that he went to the Charlotte, North Carolina website, but there's nothing on the time location. Are those going to be updated with more information as well?
Those will be updated, Kara. I'll make a commitment to stay up late and get those updated.
You heard it here, folks. All right. That's all for me.
Okay. All right. So that's great. Hopefully that can be how, if this article ever gets written, hopefully it can start with what we just talked about. But I'm not trying to tell Tony and Peggy how to do their job. They are professionals and they're smart, capable, qualified journalists. Okay. Let's go through each question. Question number 1. This is from Tony. Would you, John, be willing to share a copy of the speech on community building that I gave at the most recent Thrive gathering? Tony, we've talked about this. Reach out to me. I'm happy to share with you whatever makes sense, but obviously I can't do that here. Okay, next question. Obviously, this movement is growing, but what to you are other marked differences between what those questioning or leaving the church face today as opposed to, say, 10 years ago? So maybe that's a question for Natasha to start with, because Natasha and I have been kind of doing this almost since the beginning. So Natasha, do you have some thoughts on what's different about the Mormon faith crisis arena now versus 10 years ago?
Yeah, I've noticed quite a few differences actually, and fairly recently. Like I would say in the last year or two, I feel like there's been quite a few differences in what's coming through clinically in my office versus maybe 10 years ago. I feel like 10 years ago, the faith transition process felt slower, meaning that people would go through a faith transition in what I would consider maybe a 6-month to 18-month process. And now it's feeling like it can happen more over a weekend or over a couple of months. That seems to be what people tend to report, that things deconstructed for them as they, just kind of were on the internet over a weekend and read through maybe the CES letter or listened to like 5 different podcasts, and all of a sudden things just kind of fell apart for them. So I think one of the marked differences is the amount of resources that are out there now compared to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there were maybe a handful of podcasts. I don't think the CES letter was published as of 10 years ago. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't.
And yeah, it was more difficult to find the information. Information was on the internet. Historical information was on the internet. And I also think that the social justice issues were definitely there. The LGBTQ plus issues were there. The feminist issues were there. The racial issues were there. But even from a more national standpoint, we were not as behind as we are now. Meaning that now to be behind the times from an LGBTQ plus standpoint or a feminist standpoint is so much more not relevant than 10 years ago. You cannot have a 17-year-old girl and explain to her why she's going to have a different experience than a boy in a church organization make sense. And like you can't explain that as well as you could 10 years ago. And that's significant. Like for that to make, that used to maybe take like 50 to 100 years. For that to be that different in just 10 years, like the church is going to lose so much relevance in just the next 5 years, I think, when it comes to social justice issues, that it's just not going to be relevant, even from a standpoint of being able to keep up with basic discrimination, legal issues of the country at large, right? Like most companies these days have certain discrimination standards that way surpass where the church is at, just from LGBTQ plus and feminist issues alone. So those things are moving forward at such a high pace. Like technology and social justice issues are moving forward at such a high pace that we're not used to. We're not used to that type of fast forward movement. And when you look at kind of the generational values of, for example, the traditionalist generation, which maybe are like most of the apostles would probably fall into the traditionalist generation, born like in the when were they born? Like 30s, things of that nature, versus the baby boomer generation, versus like my generation, Generation X, versus like the millennial generation. Each one of those generations has significant different values. The traditionalist generation is going to look at their values from like you respect elders, you respect governments, you respect organizations. Baby boomers, not as much. Generational X, definitely not as much. And millennials, not at all. Like and baby boomers even, and Generation X, we're going to respect academia. Millennials, not even that. They're going to respect like the cloud, right? And so there's like information age has shifted significantly. So the information that is out there has really changed the game. So I saw that 25 years ago when I started my practice as a mental health professional. The internet was just starting. I mean, email was like a big deal. Like that was huge. So I've been in my entire career watching that technological age advance, and the church with its historical context, with it being a fairly new religion, with it being so historically focused in its testimony needing, like you need so much historical focus to have a testimony. It's just really falling apart. And so I think it's really snowballing, and we're seeing much higher numbers. It's much more common to have a mixed faith family member, mixed faith marriage, to know somebody who has left the church than ever before. And so these, there's a huge difference between now and 10 years ago.
Yeah. Beautiful. That was so smart. I'll jump on. Clint, you want to say something?
Oh, just one other comment to kind of follow up on what Natasha's saying. I think the social proof aspect of it is also, so 10 years ago, like who would you know that had left the church? Like you would be committing social suicide. You'd be a pariah. And now everyone has someone in their family, someone in their neighborhood, that has left the church. So the social proof, the best and the brightest are leaving. They see these smart, intelligent, kind, respectful people that are leaving the church. And it just makes it easier for them to make that same transition.
Totally.
Yeah. The social cost isn't as high, right? You're still going to have social costs because there is social costs. I don't want to minimize that ever. There are high costs of leaving the church. At the same time, you're usually going to have a friend, a family member that you can count on. You're not going to be completely alone.
And if I had to kind of just like think about the difference between 2022 and 2012, I mean, wow, it's mind blowing. The Gospel Topics essays come out, in 2013. Denver Snuffers excommunicated in 2013. Kate Kelly and I are excommunicated between 2014 and 2015. Same-sex marriage is legalized across the United States in 2015. The church pokes itself in the eye massively with the exclusion policy for LGBT, same-sex married couples and for their children, which has been a disaster for the church. The Gospel Topics essays have led to a massive acceleration of people learning about the problems with the Church's truth claims and leaving over it. And then when you add Bill Reel's excommunication, Lee and Cody Young's excommunication, and just the dozens and dozens and dozens of people on social media who have been excommunicated, honestly, for just speaking the truth. That's a big deal. That's really led to significant changes. And then you have the rise of Mormon Stories podcasts and all the communities and all the Facebook communities, ex-Mormon Reddit coming online and really making a huge impact. And then you have COVID happening, which has just taken tens of thousands of people out of the church physically, and then a bunch more who mentally are now out, but they're just not telling anyone because they want to be careful how they navigate it. And then you see the rise of Instagram and of TikTok and the rising generation.
106,000 followers on TikTok right now, by the way.
On the Mormon Stories podcast.
Yeah, the Mormon
TikTok.
Stories podcast. So
yeah,
the reach.
Yeah, like everything in 2012, but like on turbocharged. And the church is definitely, the hemorrhaging and the exits have accelerated. You've got Gen Zers. They don't, like you said, they don't even care about the truth claims. It's just boring and it's irrelevant and not interesting, or it's not aligned with their values. Like they care about, like, are we going to destroy the earth? Mm-hmm. Is the earth going to even be around in 10 or 20 years? Is capitalism a viable economic system? How should we love each other better? That's what kind of Gen Z people think about. And like, they don't care about Fanny Alger or the Kinderhook plates. It's not even on their radar. So yeah, the church has in some ways tried to accommodate doubters and questioners, whether it's Uchtdorf's talk about, about trying to be more tolerant for people who question or doubt, or the church trying to be more LGBT friendly. You have the church kind of, or even the Gospel Topics essays, trying to move in the direction of more transparency, more love, more tolerance, but then like continually poking itself in the eye, whether it's with Jeffrey Holland's Musket talk or Dallin H saying that conversion reparative therapy never happened for LGBTQ people, or all the excommunications of same-sex married couples within Mormonism, and the church trying to hide the Gospel Topics essays and act like they never released them because now they're realizing that the transparency has become very problematic. You've got the church really, in some sense, one step forward, and in some cases even two steps back, which has just been really confusing and disorienting. So, I mean, I don't know. That's my take. Should we go on to the next question?
Next question.
All right.
Yeah. The only thing I wanted to add to that is Ozzy said that the exodus is happening among Spanish speaking members too. I'm sure, there's other versions of Mormon stories and Portuguese.
Oh,
and
the UK.
Spanish
How about
and
the
UK
British
and the
invasion of
British,
all the YouTube channels and podcasts
Right.
coming out of the UK? There's a Spanish speaking podcast. There's Portuguese YouTube channels. Yeah, it's a serious deal. Yeah. Okay. Next question. How do you interpret the dramatic growth in demand and audiences for your podcasts and other content relating to those questioning their faith and membership in the LDS Church? So this is about podcasts and content. I'll start. Well, Kara, do you want to start with that, or do you want me to start? I'll start. So, I think one of the things I'm really proud of is that progressive and post-Mormons dominate the progressive and ex-religious movements across the board. There's no ex-religious subreddit on Reddit that comes even close to the ex-Mormon subreddit. The ex-Mormon subreddit has what, 220,000 members? The ex-Catholic, ex-evangelical, nothing comes close. In the podcasting world, whether it's Mormonism Live, Year on Polygamy, Mormon Stories, Mormon Mental Health, the Mormon Faith Crisis podcast, take your pick, Mormons on Mushrooms. Ex-Mormons dominate the ex-religious podcasting. Mormon Stories is a top 20, top 25 religion-themed podcast in the United States. So we're up there with Joel Osteen and Rick Warren and all those people. Like, we dominate Reddit, we dominate podcasting, we dominate TikTok. Like, Kara, I'm sure you could attest to how ex-Mormons are dominating TikTok, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Mormons generally, like when I was Mormon, I thought I was standing for truth and righteousness. And then if you feel like this is hurting people I love, or it's not true anymore, and some people can be a little bit too on the ex-Mormon and missionary train, but there's so much that people have to say, and they have, like Clint was explaining, their entire lives revolving around a set of principles, around a set of men that told them what to do, that they outsource a lot of their values and things to. And then now all of a sudden they need a desperate community. TikTok is so good for that. You can put your face in front of a camera, and everyone has a front-facing camera. That's kind of how this new generation talks to one another, that you don't have like a pen and paper that you're sending in the mail to each other. Everyone has a front-facing camera now. And that's the way that like this newer generation is communicating with each other, not just Instagram, not just Facebook, but TikTok has created a really amazing platform. So that's one of the biggest reasons is that, and not to be too harsh on, there's a couple, like pro LDS TikTok accounts that are still holding on. It's kind of a joke on TikTok when somebody starts a new account. They're like, hey, I'm going to get on here and I'm going to stand up to the bullies and I'm going to tell you guys the truth about the Mormon church. And people, ex-Mormons, will go on and they'll try to be respectful, but a lot of their respectful questions that they ask cannot hold up to any kind of scrutiny. And then they're usually like in the door and out the door. It's kind of the joke of ex-Mormon TikTok that like anyone who wants to be pro LDS, it's really difficult because ex-Mormons have a lot of questions that other people that might be going through, might be a what's the word? Teenager, whatever. Gen Z, that people will, be kind of deciding, what do I believe? And they can see both sides of the argument. And it's just this overwhelming, there's nothing like it. There's just so many ex-Mormons sharing their stories who have better answers for why all of the stuff within Mormonism doesn't make sense. And it's kind of like an Occam's razor thing of like a lot of people are coming to the conclusion, like the pro LDS side and the ex-Mormon side, just realizing, okay, I knew that these puzzle pieces weren't fitting together. And there's a reason now. It's because it doesn't feel right here and it doesn't feel right here. Audio listeners, I was pointing to my heart and my head. So yeah, TikTok is amazing for that. There's nothing like it online right now.
And then a couple other things I'm just going to add, because there's so much. I'm so glad you asked this question, Peggy and Tony. Like, this is a really important question. YouTube has been huge. So whether it's Zelf on the Shelf, Nemo, Jordan and McKay, Ex-Molex, even Mormon Stories podcast now has 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. And we started out as an audio only podcast. And so we're dominating YouTube. In fact, ex-Mormon social media content providers have become so dominant that one of Russell M. Nelson's first agenda items when he became prophet was to completely retreat from any usage of the term Mormon for the primary reason that we took over the usage of the word Mormon across all social media platforms and across Google. And because of that, because so many Mormons were learning about all the problems with the church basically flew the white flag and said, all Mormons no longer use the term Mormon, even though we invested $1 gazillion in the I'm a Mormon campaign and Meet the Mormons and all that stuff. We're going to throw $1 billion in marketing away, fly the white flag, retreat from any usage of the word Mormon, and we're going to hand that over to the ex-Mormon community. That's a reality. That's what happened in the past 10 years. And then if you add the amazing group of healers, all the mental health providers like Natasha, like Symmetry Solutions, like Jana Spangler, Tiffany Rowe, we could list 100, Mark Osland, like so many amazing content healers and therapists that have risen up to support people trying to work through their faith crisis. And then the final thing is all the amazing communities, whether it's Utah Valley Post-Mormon community, Thrive, whether it's the Faith Journey meetups that Chelsea Homer and her associates run, the WACA, Women of a Certain Age group, all of these communities, along with therapists and coaches, along with all the social media, it's just become overwhelming, and in a positive way, because people are healing, they're growing, they're finding friends, they're finding community, and they're realizing that they're not crazy, they're not alone, they can find friends, and they can heal and grow after Mormonism. So yeah. You want to add anything to that, Natasha?
Well, I think Clint started this podcast with a really good statement that the church did teach us good principles. They taught us to serve. They taught us to learn. They taught us to do. And that stuff doesn't go away when our beliefs change.
Yeah.
And so we're doers, we're servers, and we're learners. And so we go out there and we create things, and we want to educate ourselves, and we want to consume, resources, and we want to create resources. And so, yeah, I do think that explains a lot of why we're different from maybe other religious resources. And I think we have all of us who create these resources have other people from other entities come and say, we love your stuff, and we're not even Mormon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We all have people who have said that.
The Mormon Stories audience of ex-Jehovah's Witness, ex-Scientologist, ex-Evangelical, ex-Catholic, ex-Lutheran, ex-Muslim, it's massive.
Leave your former religion in the comments.
Yeah.
And in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. So all those things are different. And if I had to just summarize one last thing, it really is on the First Presidency of the church. Dallin H saying we don't seek or give apologies, just the unwillingness to follow the basic steps of repentance. The Mormon church will not provide full transparency financially. It won't provide full informed consent. It won't change its harmful sexual policies and practices. It won't change its LGBT policies and practices that are harmful. It's the Mormon church is just not listening and not changing in the ways that it basically taught us to learn and grow and change. And so I think really, if we want to put responsibility on one organization, it really is the Mormon church not living up to Jesus's teachings and frankly, its own teachings. I think that's probably the number one thing that we neglected to mention. You're nodding your head, Clint. You like that?
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
They sharpened the sword, and sometimes we use it against them because we love Mormons. I say that every podcast, that I want Mormonism to be a healthier place to belong to.
It's really fascinating that, a small group of people and, in a little office can
with a budget of a few $100,000 a year.
Yeah. With hardly any money can go toe to toe with $1 trillion organization. I mean, it's crazy. It's just the difference when you have the truth on your side. That's the difference. And they could repent. They could change their ways. They could come clean and say, hey, you know what? We were wrong and we misled you and we're sorry, and here's the path forward. And let's focus on love and unconditional love and service. But instead they double down on the harsh rhetoric. They still hate gay people. They need to change their ways if they want to have the outcome change.
And instead of being more supportive to women, they excommunicate Kate Kelly. Instead of being more transparent in their history, they excommunicate me and Bill Reel. Instead of changing their harmful sexual policies, they excommunicate Sam Young and Natasha Helfer. And instead of loving LGBT people, they excommunicate same-sex married couples that just want to love each other. The Mormon church is just stabbing itself in the eye multiple times. So Yeah, I hope that's helpful, Peggy and Tony. Okay.
All I
Yeah.
want to say is that all of that needs to be under the banner of, I know what Mormons are saying. We're like, but those things can't change. That's core to our doctrine. Let's all just remember that every single doctrine in Mormonism has changed since the beginning of history.
absolutely.
Basically, Greg Prince has a famous quote where he says, there isn't a single Mormon doctrine
Core Mormon doctrine,
that we have today that was there with the church. Something like, you can probably quote it
absolutely.
better than I can.
Down to the deity. Like when Joseph Smith started the church, God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost were one. Like even the Godhead has changed dramatically.
Yeah. So I know it's hard for Mormons to hear what you just said of like, we could make this healthier, but it's like, no, this is the way that God wants it to be. God's changed his mind quite a few times. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
The leaders just need to pray about it, get a revelation, and the members will do it. Like the members will love their LGBT, friends and family. They don't want to hate people. Like if a revelation comes from the top, they'll accept it.
Women would begrudgingly become bishops if the church was willing. Maybe,
yeah,
right?
of
I
course.
shouldn't speak for the women, but I'm assuming you guys would have, right, Natasha?
Well, I've said for a long time we don't use our best doctrine, and I feel like I was excommunicated for speaking what I feel was doctrinal truths in my mind. So that's correct.
Yeah, I love that. The best part of Mormon doctrine, you can definitely emphasize.
All right, next question. Are we at a unique moment, as it were, in this cultural phenomenon? And if so, how do you characterize this moment? I'm on record as calling this Mormon Spring. We're in Mormon Spring. When you think about the Arab Spring, where the Arab countries were rising up, overthrowing dictatorships, demanding democracy, transparency, freedom of the press, speaking up to abuse, dictators, all that stuff. That was the Arab Spring. I'm calling Mormon Spring. 2021, 22, after post-COVID, it's Mormon Spring. And it's only going to accelerate. It's only going to get worse for the church unless it changes its ways. And it's only going to get better for truth. What's winning is transparency, honesty, truth, compassion, equality for women, equality for gender, equality for sexual identity, honesty and openness for factual history and informed consent. The value of all those stocks are on the rise. I'm bullish for all those things, and I'm extra bearish for Orthodox Mormonism and patriarchy, Mormon patriarchy. That's my take. Clint?
I've got another way of talking about it. I'm sure that you're familiar with the Rogers adoption curve. They typically apply to technology. And, you've got these people that are, innovators, 2.5% of the people that are kind of like realizing what the new technology looks like. And it takes a few years for people to start paying attention. Then you've got the early adopters. It's about 16% of the population. And then comes this early majority, and the people just start adopting, it's like a tipping point, like cell phones. At first they're these bricks that you have in your car, and now every single kid has one in their back pocket. I feel like this is the same kind of thing. And we're getting to the point where it's just going to tip over. And there's going to be an avalanche of people leaving the church in the next decade, in my opinion. They'll probably lose 30% of their active membership in the next decade, would be my prediction.
And what's rough about that is already they've lost 70% of all the people baptized in the world. Like already the church is at 30%. So if they're losing 30% of 30%.
Of their active, of the small percentage that's left.
Yeah. That's going to get them down to 20% of total world membership. 4 out of 5 of the people ever baptized in the church will have left the church. And that's, it's not good. Natasha, how do you want to answer this question?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, just having attended the Women's Thrive event, for example, some of the questions that were asked at the very beginning of the event was, how many of you are attending your very first post-Mormon event? And I was shocked at how many hands went up. I would say more than half of the women raised their hands. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Some said 3/4.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my goodness, if this is the first event that so many of these women are attending, we need to be careful. We need to be tender. We need to be gentle. That needs to be the tone. And that was not the case. First of all, I'm used to also the majority of women at these events being about 40-esque. And the majority of the women at this event were, I would say, 25 to 35. And they were funny, and they were like resilient, and they could laugh about things that usually people can't laugh at, at their first post-Mormon event. And it was just, it was shocking to me. It was shocking to me. So I agree with the snowball that you're both talking about, that it's going quicker, it's younger, it's in more people's back pockets.
Love it. Okay, we got a question in from the audience that Kara's pulling out. I think it's going to be a super quickie. Kara, what's the quick one? And I think Clint's going to answer this one.
Nathan asked, recent criticism of post-Mormonism frame as pushing a woke neoliberal ideology. Does Thrive have a belief system that people should follow? Does Thrive push a specific ideology?
Great question. Clint.
Wow, that's a great question. So the short answer is no. My wife, Jenny, who's the executive director, she has a cold, otherwise she'd be here, talks a lot about internal authority. The answers need to come from inside of each of us. They don't need to come from some guy in a suit at a pulpit. So no, we don't have like a particular agenda and belief system that we preach. Hopefully unconditional love, would be a guiding principle, and caring for people. But no, we don't have a dogma that we preach.
Yeah, and I think we've got Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives. We definitely are pro women's rights. We're pro LGBT equality. We're pro people of color,
gender affirming.
Gender affirming.
Like we would, if you go to a Thrive event, for instance, and somebody is genderqueer, we would appreciate if you use their pronouns. Is probably the most straightforward answer. That we would hope that it's a safe environment for everyone feels welcomed and loved and included.
Yeah.
And if there's a gay couple dancing, then we hope that you'll applaud them and just admire the love that they have.
So, one of the most beautiful moments at every Thrive event we do is we ask LGBT people to stand up if they're comfortable doing so, and the entire audience erupts in applause. And then we ask all the LGBTQ allies to stand up, and just the idea is for the LGBT people who have felt so marginalized and insulted and demeaned, we want them to feel loved and embraced. And as far as women, we wanted the Thrive board, the original Thrive board, to be predominantly female. So we've got 3 women and 2 men, and that might even change more in the future. And we wanted women to preside at the meeting. So we've had Natasha or Lisa or even Kara, lead these events. So a woman's presiding, not a man. So these are just, but no political, we want everyone to feel welcome regardless of political philosophy or identity or any of that stuff.
We have also asked believing members who are there supporting faith transitioners to stand, and we applaud them.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Natasha. I mean, I think that that's powerful for them to realize that we love them too. We have family members that are still active, and we want to also show them the same amount of love and courtesy that we would hope that, anyone would show to us. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also some of the most vociferous applause is to the believers that attend a Thrive event in support of their non-believing spouse. And we do our best to moderate the content of Thrive so that it's minimally offensive, jarring, demeaning to believers. Like, if you can believe in God and come to Thrive, you can believe in Jesus and come to Thrive. You can still be an active, faithful Mormon and come to Thrive. And we'll do our best to make you feel welcome. The only asterisk is it's painful and difficult to leave a religion. And sometimes people are going to express pain or sadness or frustration. And so believers need to realize that some of that pain and discomfort is going to be expressed because that's part of the journey. It's part of the grieving process.
That's right.
Yeah.
Perfectly said, I think.
Okay. Let's see. Do you, as some do, see this in the broader context of the millennial generation and the penchant of that age group to more readily question institutions? Now, Kara, are you a millennial officially?
I am. I was born in 1989.
So how much of this is, millennial?
Doesn't every generation have a phase where they push back against the man and then they grow up and they get a little bit more conservative? I think, isn't that kind of generally how it goes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Where you kind of want to just test out things for yourself, push back. So I think just in general, I think millennials are a different generation that are less prone to working for the man, less prone to put up with crap. And if the question that they were asking, is this a millennial pushback? I would say no. I think people of all ages are leaving and questioning the authority of an authoritarian religion.
And yes, and we do have the evidence that Gen Zers and millennials are like 80% of those that have been raised Mormon, up to like 3/4 of the returned missionaries currently of current cohorts and generations are leaving the Mormon church, becoming inactive. So the church is hemorrhaging its Gen Z and its
So you
millennial
combined
members.
like a stick it to the man attitude with information, deadly combination.
Yeah.
And shifting values.
Shifting values. Yeah.
Yeah. The research from Jana Reiss is very interesting in that regard.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because Gen Zers and millennials just don't do bigotry like us older folk. Is that okay? Is that okay to say?
Maggie said, wait, let me read Maggie's comment. She said, no, millennials did not invent questioning. I don't think anyone in millennials here are saying that millennials invented questioning, but we have there's a certain generation back in the old days where there are certain words that you could call people in marginalized groups that were accepted. And then those people are still around and they're still alive. And there's certain things that younger people that are pushing that will not put up with. And every generation, every 10 years, there's certain things that we would not put up with. Go watch an episode of Friends. And there's things that we put up with 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that generation found acceptable. The younger people are like, we're going to be more inclusive. We're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much that I think invented questioning. It's that we're more like willing to call out things and not wanting to put up with stuff. That's fair enough to say, right?
Yeah. I do think TikTok, our involvement in TikTok and Instagram is probably influential in helping to provide informed consent to not just millennials and Gen Zers, but also teenagers. And so, yeah, the TikTok is hurting the church in a massive way. And that's just reality. And Kara and I didn't, Open Stories Foundation, we didn't enter TikTok to like take teens out of the church. But we do believe that teens deserve informed consent, especially young girls that are going to be making really important decisions about education and career, LGBT youth that are trying to figure out, do I enter into a mixed orientation marriage? Teens deserve to know the truth so that they can not get sucked into paths that are going to be toxic or even deadly to them. So I don't think we apologize for that, but that's kind of the reality. So,
and then they call us Cora whore at the BYU Idaho commencement.
Yep. Okay. All right. So earlier this year, Tony obtained a copy of a fascinating June 2013 document called LDS Personal Faith Crisis. Kara, we want to add this to the show notes. It's on GitHub. And it's probably one of the most important documents created in the past 20 years related to post-Mormons. Anyway, I'll keep reading the question. It's 2013 Faith Crisis report. If you put my name, Travis Stratford, or Greg Prince, Kara, it'll come up. And let's add that right now to the comments, but also to the show notes. Tony goes on to ask, it appears to have been prepared for then President Dieter Uchtdorf, and some of the report's background says it included results from an ethnographic survey that John Dallin, helped design. Yes, that's all true. Let me just really quickly say that, let's say 2011, 2012, my friend Travis Stratford came to me and Greg Prince, and we together formed a little committee to help the church understand better people losing their faith. We teamed with Hans Mattsson, a former Swedish area authority. We brought Marlin Jensen to New York City, and we conducted a survey of over 3,000 progressive and post-Mormons that had lost their faith. And we surveyed them about why they had lost their faith. We put together this formal presentation. It was presented to Marlin Jensen in New York City with Greg Prince and Travis Stratford. And eventually, Marlin Jensen invited us to come to church headquarters. And when I say us, it was Travis Stratford who actually went. And he presented to the managing directors of like the missionary department, church education system, curriculum, correlation, PR, all the head managing directors. We presented this report basically saying the church was losing its best and brightest. And it's because of the church being dishonest with its history, and people feeling betrayed, but also its issues on women, on people of color, its racist issues, and its LGBT problems. So we gave the church sort of advance notice that these problems were happening. They excommunicated me after I supported this, but we also presented, Travis Stratford put together a book that he hand delivered to President Uchtdorf, which led to Uchtdorf giving that famous talk in General Conference saying we need to be more loving and tolerant of our members in faith crisis. And it was really the first time ever in a Mormon General Conference, people of faith crisis were even acknowledged as existing. And that was a real groundbreaking time. Of course, they ended up making Marlin Jensen an emeritus general authority. But they did, this was used by Marlin Jensen in 2011, 2012 to push for the essays project. So the Gospel Topics essays literally came out as a result of this study that we conducted and that we presented the church with. So there's an episode on Mormon Stories that I'm going to ask Kara to put in the show notes by Matthew Harris that talks about the Gospel Topics essays. And there's an entire chapter that's dedicated to retelling this story in the foreword or the prologue or the first chapter of Matt Harris's book. So Kara's going to include that in the show notes. And there's also an episode that I did on, along with Hans Mattson, on a podcast that's super popular that's called The Line. Kara, if you'll Google the podcast, The Line, John Dallin, Hans Mattson, we actually do like a full hour episode telling this story on that podcast, The Line. So these are all ways that Tony, you and Peggy can research and investigate this question. But yes, the report was delivered. Yes, it's changed the church in transformative ways. Yes, you should read and promote this. And shout out to Travis Stratford, Hans and Birgitta Mattson, Marlin Jensen, Greg Prince, and all the researchers. We had like 20 PhDs analyze the data. Shout out to all of them for helping make this possible. You can also go to I actually released a preliminary version of this report to, I think it's whymormonsquestion.org. You can actually read a preliminary version of this report at whymormonsquestion.org, and Kara will include that in the show notes as well. Clint, anything you want to add to that?
I think that report is fascinating for those who haven't seen it. I have it saved on my desktop as an icon. It's like 150 pages, but it, talks about like the faith transition journey, what a typical transition looks like, the personas of people that go through it, a bunch of stories, surveys, the results of, why people are leaving the church. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Natasha, anything you want to add to that?
I just remember being around when you were doing this work, and it's just amazing sometimes for me to think how long we've been at
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
How long we've been at this, how long this has all been, in the ethos, and just, shout out to you and how long we've all been, really working at this topic that has been so difficult. And, and that was prior to your excommunication. And then I think of all that work that you did. And then I think of that, it makes me just kind of emotional and angry, but just to see that, that visual of you as an enemy to the church is just really, upsetting to see how they treat so many of us that no fault of our own are in this space of trying to find solutions to the problems that we're just in the midst of trying to find some type of answers for. So thank you, John, and thank you, Travis, and thank you to all those people that you mentioned.
Thank you, Natasha.
It's crazy, Natasha, like the work that you guys are doing that we're involved in, you're just trying to clean up these messes, and you didn't cause these messes. You didn't cause all these broken families, all this heartache. And it's hard. And then, and then the way that they pay you back is they kick you out, and we were there and we watched that happen, and that was painful and that was hard, Yeah.
Yeah. And shout out to, Jeremy Runnels, Bill Reel, Radio Free Mormon, Lee and Cody Young, I know I'm going to forget other, excommunications, Sam Young, all the excommunications. We have so many people, Kyle Ashworth. There's just so many people, Tyler Glenn. I couldn't even name all the people on Mormon Stories, all the activists, even, Kate Kelly and all the ordained women, just so many people have fought so hard. And it's just weird to think about the strategy chambers at church headquarters that are like, yep, let's make all these changes and let's make sure and excommunicate everybody that helped make these changes possible. It's kind of weird, but thank you, Natasha, for that heartfelt, and Clint as well. Kara, is there anything that you want to add to this question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. A lot of this happened before your time. You're kind of new. You're just a couple years into this. You're just but a babe.
I am but a baby. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So hopefully that was useful. In terms of he asked, can you share any insights into the development of that report and its impact? I know that I'm pretty sure it got Uchtdorf demoted from the First Presidency by almost all reports. Boyd K. Packer and Dallin H. Oaks and Russell M. Nelson were angry that the Gospel Topics essays were released. So first of all, the Gospel Topics essays are a direct result of this report that's been documented in Matt Smith's book and by lots of people. So that we have the Gospel Topics essays, we have Uchtdorf released from the First Presidency as a result. Lots of excommunications. And basically, you asked at the beginning, what's changed in the past 10 years? We said acceleration, like it all began about 10 years ago when this report first came out, and then the Gospel Topics essays, and then the wave of excommunications. Like that was kind of that report was the beginning of kind of the end of the modern Mormon church, I would say. Any of you guys want to say anything else about that report and its impact? Okay. Do you have any observations on the role the report may have played at that time in bringing many of these commonalities among questioning Latter-day Saints to light, both for lay members and for church leaders? I think we've kind of answered that. It's basically that report led to the Gospel Topics essays, but it also led to the CES letter. It also led to Mormon Stories. It led to all these excommunications. And one of the things I'm really proud of over the past 10 years is we turned excommunication, as barbaric and medieval as it is, we turned it into a badge of honor. Because if you were excommunicated in the past 10 years, it doesn't mean you were a pedophile. Those people were protected. It doesn't mean you were a rapist. Those people were protected. It doesn't mean you embezzled money. If you were excommunicated in the past 10 years, you were likely an activist fighting for social justice. You were fighting for informed consent. You were fighting for transparency. You're fighting for sexual health. You're fighting for women's rights. You're fighting for minorities, for people of color. You're fighting for LGBT people or trans people or, gender inclusion or the treatment of children to be humane and not deviantly sexual in terms of how bishops treat people. I'm proud of that. And, anything you guys want to add, Clint?
One thing that I think would be fascinating, John, and we'll probably never be able to do this, but if we could do a survey of active LDS members and see if they know about this report, I guarantee you they don't know about it. Ask them if they even know about the essays. They also don't know about that. It's hidden on the church's website. Like, active members of the LDS church don't know about these resources.
That's so bizarre. That should be something that the constant Trib articles are addressing, is that you go to the average bishop or stake president, they still have never heard of any of these issues in spite of all this stuff. And that's just, we call that the bubble. That shows how, high demand religions control information, make members afraid to learn the information. They're warned against learning truthful information. And so in spite of all this stuff, the average member is oblivious to all of it. And even the average bishop and stake president. So
that'd make a great reality show. Just asking people on the street if they've heard of the Gospel Topics essays. Or you could be like my parents, who they've seen them and they think that the church has been co-opted by progressives like Richard Bushman. The stone in the hat thing, they don't believe it. They think that's a progressive rewriting of history. So they can read the stuff and they still go back to the old narrative.
Yeah, the church has done a really good job of basically saying anything that makes an Orthodox Mormon feel uncomfortable is anti-Mormon literature. Stay away from it. And thus, thus the church membership remains largely oblivious, and the leadership, and it's to their own demise and to their own peril, because continually people are learning about this through the internet, discovering that they've been betrayed, that they've been lied to, that the church knew better and they didn't come clean. And it's just more pain. And again, the fact that the church is now trying to hide the essays and backtrack is just a mess. What a lost opportunity.
Yeah, it's a fear-based response. And unfortunately, it does work at some levels, right? Which is kind of where it does work, is with these more Orthodox members or with the small insular group, which is, I guess, why they continue to try these attempts. And unfortunately, the fear-based response is a normal kind of fight, flight, freeze response, right, of the human psyche. It goes against, the basic, most repeated scripture in the New Testament, which is fear not. And I don't think it is the winning response. So I don't think it's what will win in the end.
The major finding of the report is that people feel betrayed, and that the church is blowing it on social justice issues with women, people of color, and LGBTQ people. And the church has not fixed any of that in a material way. At the best they've done is released a book that's like a poor history, released a bunch of gospel topics essays that are apologetic and gaslighting. And then they've done their best to make sure nobody ever reads or finds out about them. And so that's it.
Yeah, the inoculation is real. Like, I have friends who have read the Saints book that the church came out, and they're like, wow, the church is being so transparent. And then LDS discussions. No, not LDS discussions. Is that what it is? What's the name of that guy who has, anyway?
Yeah.
LDS discussions. Yeah. That has an annotated version of the Saints book of everything that they left out. So to a believing member, the church is more transparent than ever. But to somebody who has the whole landscape of all of the, truth of the church before them, the church is it's a drop in the bucket. So a lot of people are still frustrated and wishing that would come forward. So I think that's a good reflection of that.
And still no apology. Like, what we want is an apology. Sorry we misled you. Sorry we hurt all these vulnerable minority populations. We'll try to do better and we'll fix it. And that's just basic repentance 101. Mormon Church, we would love you to follow your own teachings. Christ's teachings shouldn't be super unreasonable of an expectation. Okay, next question. Do you feel that the report's findings in 2013 have held up in subsequent years? I would rephrase that. Is the church still hiding and deceiving people, gaslighting people, and are members still feeling betrayed in mass when they learn about it? Yes. Clint?
Yes.
Natasha?
Yes.
You keep going to me for Natasha's shot.
Okay, Natasha?
Yes.
Kara?
I am a sex expert, but not like Natasha. I'm just kidding.
Different type of expert, Kara.
No,
Is that
I'm
what
not.
you're...
No, I wish I had Natasha's brain. I am not Natasha, nor do I have the poise. The answer is, are they still hiding things?
And army people. And
yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there an opening need, as some suggest, for a more updated assessment of the magnitude of Mormon disaffection, numbers, and reasons for those questioning departing the church, etc. today? I've got an answer. Clint, do you want to start with that?
I'd love to see that kind of data. And I guarantee you there's no way in hell the church is going to release it.
Why not?
Because I think it'll look horrible.
Yeah.
I'd love to see accountability, like an organization that takes in $7 or $8 billion in revenue from its members in the form of tithing.
That's another thing we didn't even mention. To
say nothing of the additional 10 or 20 billion. I mean, the way the stock market's gone, maybe 50 billion that they've made on their, in Ensign Peak, their investment fund. They don't have any financial transparency. Zero. I mean, these little tiny organizations that we do that have $100,000, a few $100,000 a year in annual donations, we're completely transparent. This organization that has billions of dollars at their disposal, nothing. All they say is in conference, trust us. We've had accountants looked at it. Everything's great. Trust us.
Yeah.
No transparency at all. We would see a decline in tithing revenue, in my opinion. We would see a decline in attendance. I mean, their numbers, in my opinion, are dismal.
I mean, a couple things. So you mentioned, we even forgot to mention, the whistleblowers, David Nielsen and Lars Nielsen, uncovering the reality of Ensign Peak, $150 billion of investments. That's new. People like James Huntsman, son of billionaire faithful Mormon John Huntsman, suing the church over fraud. That's all new. And then what's also new is both the Mormon church stopped releasing its membership statistics information in general conference after 150 years of releasing that information. Why would the Mormon church stop releasing its membership information? Because the numbers were awful. And even here in Salt Lake City and in Utah, the church used to release membership information for counties in Salt Lake, in Utah, across Utah. And just this year, they've stopped. So they're going backwards in terms of transparency, not even forward. And that's mind-blowing. Natasha, anything you want to say about that?
Not really. I mean, what else is there to say?
Yeah.
Goodness
Like,
grief.
in some ways, things are worse than they were 10 years ago. That's mind-blowing. Yeah. Kara?
Are you saying it's worse because we know more?
No, it's worse because like the church is actually less
Sharing
transparent in some ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when the numbers look crappy, then you stop releasing them.
You hide the numbers.
You hide it.
Yeah.
And in terms of growth, right? Like the only new growth of the church is children being born in the church, right? Like the growth is going to be stagnant as well. So they need to hold on to
the growth rate is less than 1% at this point. It's grinding to a screeching halt. It's only the active U.S. Mormon birth rate of 3 kids per couple that's even keeping the church slightly growing at this point, if you could even call it that. But within a few years, if not a decade or two, the church will literally be shrinking worldwide. And it's trying to make up for those statistics in Africa. But many people see Africa as just a Potemkin town attempt at basically massaging the statistics. We could have invested in Africa 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Why didn't we? We're investing in Africa now because it's our last frontier. It's Mormon Church's last frontier because we've basically saturated the missionary market in Latin America, the Philippines. Europe doesn't want this. Asia doesn't want this. Africa's the church's last hope at growth.
Do you want to hear a fun fact? That I am friends with somebody who is working on the new church hymn book. And I said, what are you changing about the church hymn book? And they said that it's going to be a lot more international. And I said, how so? And they said, well, they're adding a bunch of African spiritual hymns to it. And I said, isn't that interesting? So I think they're trying to get more international. There's a lot of good in that, obviously, but I think that they know, if that's the first thing that he said to me, is that they're trying to make it more friendly to Africans. That's probably where they know that that's the only space for real long-term growth, I guess.
And Carol, I'll ask you to add my second interview with Roger Hendricks, a management consultant, analyzes the church.
Yeah.
Because in that interview, Roger Hendricks talks all about the church's Africa strategy as a way to kind of stem the tide.
And while we're talking about Africa, we have a Mormon Stories episode, a 3-part Mormon Stories episode of a convert from Zimbabwe. So Mackenzie and Gerald Benzie, a 3-part series. The last one drops tomorrow. So we also discuss in these episodes if missionaries target what's what I'm looking for.
Just people in developing countries.
And only people and immigrants as well. Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to post that shout out too.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost done, Tony and Peggy, with the questions. I hope this is useful. We really sincerely, and by the way, we asked them to also send us any additional questions between these second set and now. They haven't, but if you guys have a third set of questions, we would love to answer them. Okay, let's see. Tony says, I want to ask again. Okay, so he has a question here about OSF finances, and we've given him all the information. He asked for the name of a specific individual that doesn't want their name to be released. So, Tony, we've already answered this question. Second to the last question, your penultimate question, we already answered it. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have anything more. We did talk about the fact that just sort of, I would say one of our haters filed a complaint with Utah, state of Utah, questioning the Open Stories Foundation's finances, its ethics around my compensation, around our financial dealings. We were thrilled. It's never fun to be audited, especially by a theocracy, but we were audited by the theocracy. We willingly gave 3 years full financial information, And literally the answer came back. We find no wrongdoing. This audit is concluded. So we've already told you guys that in the last episode. They want the name of the investigator, and no, we're not going to. We asked the investigator whether they wanted their name released. They said no, so we're not going to provide it.
Well, and
Out
they
of
also,
respect for them.
yeah, and they also said, at least, my memory of the email, that they're not allowed. The state
Yeah.
doesn't allow like the individual investigators' names to be released.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because they're private people. So, all right. So that's that. Last question. Finally, we wanted to reiterate our request for a live phone interview at some point. Would you still consider that? Clint, do you want to report how things played out? Because we were super excited. We wanted to have them a part of this live stream. Natasha, you and Kara and Clint, Jenny, Lisa, we were all willing to have Peggy and Tony in our studio, live stream a live Q&A where they could ask us any question. We would answer any question. So we were willing to do that. They declined that. That's fine. But we also, of course, were super willing. Clint, do you want to talk about that?
yeah. So the other thing that I mentioned at the first of the podcast, I reached out to both. Well, I spoke with Tony and Peggy both and mentioned the idea of getting a lunch together, and the three of us would sit down along with them, and we could talk about whatever they would like to bring up and ask any questions. Tony seemed amenable to it, and then Peggy declined. She said that she didn't want to spend that much time on this article, that this is just going to be a short article, and she didn't want to spend that kind of time on that. So that was the response. And if they would like to get together and do a lunch meeting, I think that we would be happy to do that. So I don't know if they're buying or we are, but either way, we'll be fine.
I was never contacted, so that's all I have to say.
Yeah. And I'm going to reiterate that. I was just like, Tony, Peggy, if you want to learn about Thrive, ask Clint and Jenny Martin, ask Natasha, ask Lisa. We can give you 1,000, 1,500 people that attend a recent event. They would love to tell you how amazing Thrive is. We could put you in touch with the community leaders of the dozens and dozens of local Thrive communities in Sacramento and Orange County and Texas and Houston and Atlanta, all over the United States and even in the UK and Canada. Like, yes, we would love to have you talk to the people at Thrive at all levels. And so far they've made 0 phone calls that we're aware of. Maybe they have made phone calls, but that's one thing I'm kind of a bit frustrated with is, and again, I'll end how I started. It just seemed like they came out of the gate kind of wanting to smear or defame Thrive without any real interest in all the good that it's doing. And if I was a little bit salty, if I was a little bit aggressive, it's because I felt like it was unprofessional journalism. And maybe that's not kind to say. Maybe Clint, you would phrase it in other ways, but I'm like, Thrive deserves care. It deserves time. It deserves attention. It's important. And I don't want to be insulted by gotcha questions, because there's no there. There's nothing to gotcha. It's just a bunch of people trying to help a bunch of people in pain find healing and joy.
Well, we don't want to burn any bridges with the reporters. I'm happy to talk to them anytime. And, it's hard to understand what people's motives are, and what religions they may or may not be a part of. So anyway, we'll leave it where it is. There may be other reporters. It sounds like Kara had someone that was reaching out. If they want to do an article about this, if they think it's interesting, if they want to hear about why 22 cities across the world would get together on the same day in the middle of winter to get together and talk about these issues and support each other and build community and find each other and love each other. Well, that sounds like an interesting story, and it's all volunteer effort. Sounds amazing to me. So if they want to talk about that, reach out. We'll be happy to talk to you about that.
And I tried to make the point before that, yes, the Salt Lake Tribune wants to stay friendly to believing Mormons because that's part of its subscriber base. But I can guarantee you that 2 to 1 or 3 or 4 to 1, the Salt Lake Tribune subscriber base is ex-Mormons or non-Mormons. And I do want to just reiterate my call to the Salt Lake Tribune to do more stories on ex-Mormonism, on progressive Mormon, on post-Mormonism, because it's a real deal. It's a real movement. I'll tell you this, it's the number one thing on the minds of the church leaders right now. So why shouldn't it be the number one leading kind of emphasis with the Salt Lake Tribune's religion reporting? So I would just love more reporting on, and I appreciated that within a few weeks of our last live stream for Peggy and Tony, that the Salt Lake Tribune covered Jeff Green, the billionaire that's just come out, resigned from the church, did an open public resignation, donated to Equality Utah. Like, wow, thank you. More of that, I would say, because there's just so many cool stories that could be covered. And I think it might help them sell a few papers. Maybe.
Hey, John, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you proposing that you become a reporter for the Salt Lake Tribune and do some articles for them?
I would work for them
Okay.
part-time. I would
Okay.
volunteer. You wouldn't even have to pay me. I would even help. I would help take over the Salt Lake Tribune's podcast and help them have a really, or contribute to the Salt Lake Tribune's podcast, because I think I could help you guys. Maybe I could help you guys.
Wow. So check that out. So Mr. Huntsman, owner of I guess they turned it to a nonprofit, but anyway, Mr. Huntsman, John Dallin just made you an offer.
Yeah,
See if you want to take him up.
There's one comment I want to highlight, and Carrie, you may have others. Mark Fuentes writes, "You should offer to do an interview for a competing newspaper." I don't know if that's sarcasm or not, but the competing newspaper to the Salt Lake Tribune is the Deseret News, which the church owns. And I'm sure Mark Fuentes knows this. But that's why we don't hate the Salt Lake Tribune. I respect Peggy Fletcher Stack more than almost anyone. She's a legend. She's been doing this reporting in this space for 30 or 40 years. She started Sunstone. We all love and admire Peggy's work over the past several decades. So shout out to Peggy. Keep up that really great journalism. And I'm sure, Tony, I reviewed your articles. Tony, you've done great work. And just most importantly, long live the Salt Lake Tribune. If you can preserve the long-standing tradition of truly independent reporting of all the news that Utahns care about. And it's an international newspaper for all the people that follow Mormonism. So long live Salt Lake Tribune if it's going to stay a professional, independent newspaper. Fair?
Fair.
Natasha, any final words?
I'm a subscriber to the Salt Lake Tribune.
You're the only person whose opinion matters.
I don't think I've ever turned down a reporter's request for an interview, although I probably ignored several after my excommunication because I think I was asleep for 2 weeks.
Did Peggy interview you during your excommunication?
No.
Did she ask to interview you?
I don't think Peggy did. I don't know. I don't know sometimes.
But you're not aware.
I think
You're
that
not
there were
aware of Peggy.
emails and messages that I still have not gotten back to. So
As far as you know, Peggy did not.
as far as I know, I think that I missed some opportunities to be interviewed those first few weeks after my excommunication for sure. So she may have. I don't know.
Okay.
That was a hard time.
That was a hard time.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't mean to ever turn down an interview.
All right.
And I support the Salt Lake Tribune.
Yeah. Kara, do you want to highlight any questions, or do you want to have any final things to say before Clint and I kind of wrap up? Any
No, I think we're good.
anything the audience is kind of overall communicating today that you've been kind of monitoring?
I think I highlighted my most favorite ones, but
Okay.
everyone's been very active. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the chat.
What's the general vibe?
We're all just chatting about random things. I don't know. There's not one way to summarize it, except for everyone is really cool. And I love you guys a lot. That's it.
And anything you want to say to Tony or Peggy or the Salt Lake Tribune, or anything you want to say about Thrive or the Open Stories Foundation? I'm not fishing. You can say no.
I can say the exact truest thing, which is I've worked here since May. John's been a great boss. He's been super transparent with me since the very first day that I sat down in a chair back there, let me know the good, the bad, the ugly, the history of this entire foundation, gave me the opportunity to work here knowing that we're going to get slander. We're going to get, different people coming after us. And so this is the business and we understand that. And so if that is in any way interpreted, this whole thing that we just did as us throwing slander, I hope not. I hope this is just in the good spirit of transparency, that the donors, the listeners, and publications also know what this organization is about between the OSF and Thrive. So I've worked here since May, and if there was any dirt, I would have found it by now. No, I would have the blackmail. No, just kidding. The blackmail letter would have been written. No. All I have to say is that this has been a fantastic organization to work for, and I'm super, super impressed with all of the work that Clint, Natasha, John,
Lisa.
Jenny, Lisa, that everyone has been extremely, I have to think of a better word than just really awesome and really, really, I'm trying to think of a better word than transparent, just really forward with all the information, and exceeding my expectations, I guess.
And you emceed a couple of the major Thrive events, and you attended the gala. Your testimony of Thrive?
I'd like to bear my testimony of Thrive, not because all of my bosses are in the room right now or anything. No, I hosted the Thrive Women's event. That was like 800 women. It was like one of the funnest days of my life. Tons and tons of people just coming to laugh and support one another. And then I hosted the other big Thrive event,
Thrive Day.
Thrive Day 2021 in November,
1,500
at the
people.
big Salt Palace. It was huge. It was exciting. I was just really honored that everyone trusted me enough to give me a microphone. More than they already do right now. I'm probably going to get my mic cut if I say anything else now. It just has been really fun.
And you
It's
and
been a
Aaron
really, really fun
danced
time.
for 4 straight hours at the Thrive New Year's Gala. True?
Yeah. It was like I was in Hocus Pocus and Winnie put a spell over me to dance until I die. Does anyone get that reference? Millennials, you'll get it anyway. So nobody in this room? All right. Anyway, yeah, we danced really, really hard and had a really good time.
We're not
Thanks, Kara.
millennials, Clint.
All right, Clint, final words, final messages for Peggy, for Tony, for the listeners about Thrive. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, we just appreciate everyone's support when we host these activities. You know, you kind of feel a little uncomfortable putting yourself out there. Renting the Salt Palace doesn't come cheap, and you hope that people want to show up. And we just appreciate all the listeners, all the people that are supporting us by just showing up and being a part of this community. This community is not top down, it's bottom up. It's just, you know, of the people and for the people, you know, I mean, it's not about who's the most important and who's at the top. It's, you know, really just about the people and them having a safe place to go where they can feel loved and accepted just exactly how they are.
And it's not about creating a new church. It's not about creating a new patriarchy. And it's not about profiting off of the pain of others. It's literally just to promote healing, growth, and community for transitioning and post-Mormons.
That's it.
What's not to love?
That's it.
And that's a story worth covering again and again and again, in my humble opinion. I will just do a shout out. If you want to attend the Thrive event, Thrive Day, Thrive Unite, January 22nd, go to thrivebeyondreligion.com and find the event near you. You can register. These events are selling out these days. And so go now to sell out, to purchase your tickets so that you can attend. And also there's just the standing invitation to, you can go to the Thrive Beyond Religion map and you can find a community near you, or you could start your own local community. You can email Clint at thrivebeyondreligion@gmail.com and he will help you start your own community or start your own local events. And we're helping St. George do an event in February. So we're going to bring a Thrive event to St. George, which we're excited about. And we'll be releasing soon an event calendar for 2022 and beyond. So like, we're just getting started, folks. 2022 stands to be the best year ever for Thrive. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's only growing.
Only growing.
All right. All right, Clint, thank you so much for joining us and for all your hard work. You're
welcome.
You're a hero to me and to so many people.
Yeah.
So, and Jenny, shout out to Jenny and to Lisa and to all the Thrive community leaders, all the volunteers that are organizing all these events, all the
They
people
work so hard.
And all the people that show up to these events and volunteer. Like, thank you to all the people and everyone who's made. And if Thrive disappears tomorrow, it will have been a phenomenal success. True?
Absolutely. And, you know, I want to just take a quick second to say thank you to you. You know, you're usually the host, and so you don't get a chance to let people thank you. But I mean, you know, you've put your ass on the line for this community, you know, for a lot of years. And being on the OSF board, I get to see this behind the scenes stuff. And, you know, it's hard. You know, I mean, there are a lot of haters, you know, I mean, when you're going up against $1 trillion organization, you know, there's bound to people that are going to be haters. And, you know, so I just want to say thank you to you for putting yourself and your family, you know, on the line for us. And also to Kara, you know, she's new to this industry, but quickly getting a baptism by fire and realizing how fun it is and how tough it can be too, you know. But anytime I'm out in public with, you know, especially with John, but also with Kara or Natasha for that matter, it's just amazing to see the people walk up and just this heartfelt thanks, and just to hear their stories of you've saved my life and thank you for all that you do. So let me be their voice to say thank you to each of you three, actually, because what you're doing is really amazing.
Thank you, Clint.
Thanks, Clint. Yeah. As somebody who's like got front row seats to how hard John Dallin's job is. So yeah, I definitely echo what Clint said. So John, you are like the front man for so much hate from within the Mormon community and from ex-Mormons. They carry a lot of trauma with them too.
Ex-Mormons are way worse than Mormons. I'm just going to say it. Most ex-Mormons are phenomenally amazing, but the ex-Mormon haters are the absolute worst, in my opinion.
Yeah. The best advice that I ever had was at Sunstone. Lindsay Hansen Park took me aside and talked to me for an hour about what to expect as a woman in this space. And I was like taking notes, and she's like, yeah, the Mormons are their own breed, but the ex-Mormons carry a lot of trauma with them into this space. So you have to understand people's conditioning, be really gentle and kind with people, understand where they're coming from and not take anything too personal. So I'm glad that we did this. We kind of got to air out everything, keep it nice and above board. So everyone really enjoyed this podcast and us answering the questions. So thanks again for everyone in the chat. Thanks, John, Natasha, Clint.
And Peggy and Tony, if you have any other questions, please let us know. And Natasha, thank you for being my partner from the very beginning of the Open Stories Foundation, for being so supportive, for lending your wisdom, your expertise, all the retreats and workshops we've done together, and for just being a healer in our community. How many marriages and lives, how much mental health have you saved? How many people's sex lives have you helped heal, both with your work and with Symmetry Solutions and all the other things you do, Mormon Mental Health Podcast, etc. We love you, Natasha. We're thankful for you. And we couldn't have made the past 16 years happen without your efforts.
Thank you, John.
Well
It was
said.
actually longer than that when we first did a Sunstone presentation together.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we barely knew each other when we started. So long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going anywhere. Are you going anywhere?
I'm not going anywhere, John.
Carrie, you going anywhere?
You're stuck with me.
No. Hard as nails. You've met my parents. You know who I was raised by. I can handle anything.
And Natasha, you're coming back strong.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mhm.
Natasha's a light. People are saying that John and Kara are a light, and I just want to make sure everyone knows Natasha is a light. She radiates.
Yep.
Clint and
Aw.
Jenny, Lisa, everyone else that we've named are just, if there's anything to be said about like, oh, ex-Mormons, their countenance has changed. Countenance has brightened. Let me tell you, these people that we associate with are such beautiful people inside and out.
Kumbaya, my Lord. Kumbaya.
This has got good senses of humor.
My Lord. Kumbaya. Sorry. We just jumped the shark. We officially jumped the shark.
Must be getting late. Time to go home.
This is only a 1 hour and 40-minute Mormon Stories
We just
podcast.
broke
We
a
just
Mormon
started.
Stories land speed record by doing an episode in under 2 hours. All right.
Wow.
Love you guys.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Clint.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Love you too,
Natasha.
guys.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Kara.
Thank you, Clint.
Thanks, listeners.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. And thanks, Jenny and everyone else. And we'll see you guys all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Peggy and Tony, reach out. We would love to talk more, answer any other questions you have. We look forward to a really professional, uplifting, and positive and fair article from you when you're ready. Thanks, everybody. Take care.